Carson also had more touchdowns than everyone besides Dak Prescott, while throwing less interceptions than Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray in his rookie season, and Jimmy G. We can obviously discount Kyler Murray a bit there because it was his rookie season, but still Carson continues to show his ability to score the ball and protect the ball more than the rest of these bums. Forgive me, Tom Brady, Lord, for I've sinned. Didn't mean to throw you in that loop, but you're in that group there. Not to mention, if we look at his performance in each game, Carson had more yards per game than Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy G, Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill, and Josh Allen. And he's still not on this list.
Welcome to the ChadBurn Show, brought to you by M. Chad Baldwin.
Welcome to the ChadBurn Show. I am your host, ChadBurn, and we're reporting again from Montreal, the home place of the ChadBurn Show, in our apartment, obviously, as it continues to fight off the COVID pandemic and record from our location here in quarantine. It's unfortunately not a beautiful day outside, dealing with some rain, but it is a beautiful day in sports. Yes, that is right. Everything has kicked off. We obviously had the MLB already started and games were underway, but basketball is back. Hockey is back, especially up in here in Canada. The hockey is huge. It was excited to get hard to see it last night, especially for Montreal. The Habs beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in overtime 3-2 by Petrie, obviously, with the goal at the end. It was beautiful to kind of see the playoff hockey atmosphere back in full throttle. Amazing to see their setup during COVID, which we'll discuss a little later on what are the better systems that we see in place right now with COVID going on in all the major leagues. But they have obviously an Eastern stadium that they're all playing at, and a Western stadium. NBA has been kicked off since Thursday. It's been amazing to watch the games. The Lakers-Clippers was an awesome way to start the NBA season. Of course, with a game go-ahead winning basket made by LeBron James after Paul George tying it up. Just excitement back and forth. The Sixers lost last night, 127-121 to the Indiana Pacers. I unfortunately did not get to watch most of that game. But again, we had Embiid and Harris leading it off. 41 points for Embiid, 30 points for Harris. Simmons behind at 19, but Embiid already with a double-double to start off the season with the 41 points, 21 rebounds. Other notable stats for him as well. He did play a full 34 minutes, and he had the 3 blocks to add on to everything else. So exciting to see that they're getting underway. I'm a little disappointed considering they were leading most of the game. To see that they lost to the Indiana Pacers. But, that's the thing. Russ got to be knocked off. They got to get enrolled. But the Sixers cannot afford to lose a lot of games right now if they want to hold a good seed going into the playoffs. So my hope is they figure this out real fast. But let's look away from the excitement that's been going on, and we're going to cover a bit of the leagues. We're going to discuss kind of how COVID is impacting and how the different strategies are setting up, how we could see some of this relate to the NFL. But luckily for us, the NFL also decided to give us a little news this week. And in my opinion, it wasn't great news. The NFL, once again, had their NFL 100, and it was a little shocking to say the least. So we're going to start off, obviously, with a little bit of a monologue discussing we're going to go back to the ChadBurn monologue to start off the show, discuss this NFL 100 list and what was the big snub of it all and my thoughts around it. So without further ado, we'll hit on that. We'll get to COVID later on. Next week, we're going to have some great guests on the show to discuss even more about looking at NFL redraft and how COVID, their take on how COVID and whether or not these seasons will be able to be held as we go along. But let's first look at the big news, the NFL 100 that made somehow splashes, even though it's a bullshit of a list. But anyways, this week, obviously, NFL 100 finally finished up their list with their top 10 players voted on by the players in the NFL. And man, as mentioned, it was a doozy. After revealing, embarrassingly, that the top quarterback was someone other than Patrick Mahomes, the list became even more of a joke when it was revealed who was left off the list, namely Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, the quarterback who threw for more than 4,000 yards without one wide receiver, going over 500 yards receiving, and led the Eagles on an incredible 4-game winning streak at the end of the season against divisional rivals to knock the Cowboys out of the playoffs and win the division themselves, was left off the list in favor of some really just, incredible high-talent quarterbacks, including Ryan Tannehill, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Jimmy G, and Kirk freaking Cousins. The level of disrespect here is unbelievable. Those quarterbacks that I just listed don't deserve to even hold Carson's jockstrap. And when we go through the actual numbers, it becomes even more evident that this list has become more of a popularity contest driven by storylines rather than production and skill on the field. Let's run it back and take a look at all the quarterbacks who made the list, excluding obviously Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson, who had the hell of a season in 2019 and deserved to be the top 3 quarterbacks listed obviously up there. Let's see how the other quarterbacks did in 2019 and see how they compared to Carson Wentz. To start, let's see how Carson Wentz was used in his offensive schemes compared to the rest of the other teams and the quarterbacks in their position. Because of the offense that Carson had to work with, he had more throwing attempts than all the quarterbacks listed above besides Tom Brady. Again, the quarterbacks that made the list besides Carson Wentz were Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy G, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, Josh Allen, and Kyler Murray. So he had more throwing attempts than all of them besides Tom Brady. The offense was more focused was more focused on pass for Carson Wentz than the likes of Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, and Jimmy G, who all had elite running games that they could depend on. Carson was more of a central focus on that team. This hurt his completion rating for sure to put him in the middle of the pack, only beating out Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Josh Allen. But again, Carson and those 3 quarterbacks I just listed, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Josh Allen, were required to throw the ball almost 200 times more than the rest on the list. Not to mention, Carson did take advantage of those attempts and was able to accumulate more throwing yards than everyone there besides Dak Prescott. Still, he's not on the list. Don't forget also, Dak Prescott headed the number 1 offense in the league, and Tom Brady was another quarterback Carson Wentz didn't beat out there, but he beat the rest of the list on there by a wide margin. Carson also had more touchdowns than everyone besides Dak Prescott, while throwing less interceptions than Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray in his rookie season, and Jimmy G. We can obviously discount Kyler Murray a bit there because it was his rookie season, but still Carson continues to show his ability to score the ball and protect the ball more than the rest of these bums. Forgive me, Tom Brady, Lord, for I've sinned. Didn't mean to throw you in that loop, but you're in that group there. Not to mention, if we look at his performance in each game, Carson had more yards per game than Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy G, Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill, and Josh Allen. And he's still not on this list. Also, throw another one in there. He was top 5 in this group for rushing yards. A dual threat quarterback that this league seems to hold to some high regard, and he's still not there. Oh my God. And to those who care about the clutchness factor, well, here, I'll add this one in for you. Carson Wentz, compared to all those quarterbacks, again, who made the list besides him, had 4 game-winning drives. That was tied with Jimmy G for second on the list of quarterbacks and only behind Josh Allen, surprisingly, who had 5. So how on earth was Carson Wentz left off this list? I think it's time we look at the storylines of these players and the popularity of them rather than skill set. Because if we look at skill and look at all the numbers I just presented to you on Carson Wentz and how he's able to beat out everyone and how he was able to put up these numbers without having one receiver over 500 yards, it becomes clear who is a better quarterback. With 3 of his starting wide receivers out with injuries and left with a bunch of scrubs from the practice squad to throw to, Carson Wentz clearly beats out Josh Allen. He clearly is better than Kirk Cousins. He's clearly beating out Kyler Murray and Ryan Tannehill, and he's clearly beating out Jimmy G. Not to mention, based on the losing run the Cowboys had at the end of the season, including a loss to Wentz that had them miss the playoffs, there can even be a strong argument he should be in above Dak. But again, also throw some respect at Dak because the numbers were crazy in 2019. But again, we need to look at the storylines because that seems to be what motivates people to put the players on this list. So we'll start off with Josh Allen. He, of course, was not expected to do anything with the Bills, yet somehow took them on a 10-6 record and a playoff berth. It was impressive for sure. He made believers out of the league as a young quarterback with a losing franchise, but he certainly did not blow up the stat sheet. And when push came to shove, he could not stand up against tougher competition to people like Carson Wentz and the Eagles who came in and beat them. Move on to Kirk Cousins. Besides his playoff win against the Saints, what the hell did he do? I'll give him a solid rating that he had this season of a 107.4, but besides that, the yards were lacking, the TDs were still less than Wentz, and he had a superior cast of players around him. He should have been blowing out the competition, and again, the storyline is all we care about is that the Saints were who we beat in the playoffs, and we got another, you like that, in the media. He had a really cool moment, and that's it. But again, he had an elite running back. He had an elite cast around him. He should have been winning a lot more. And the fact that we're all impressed and giving him support on that, no. He should have been competitive in that game. It should have been expected more of him to win. We shouldn't just have thrown them to the side. But it's storyline, and everyone likes a good story. Kyler Murray. Well, that's not even really worth it. Because honestly, we saw what he did this year, and he's a rookie. And the rookie still can't tread water next to Wentz. So let's just throw that out there, the fact that he got on. That feels like a sympathy vote that he got up there above everyone else. Ryan Tannehill. Are we fucking serious? The dude came off the bench and led the Titans on... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. He didn't lead the Titans. Derrick Henry led the Titans on an impressive playoff run. The Titans didn't get out of the first round of the playoffs if not for Henry, who was the league-leading rusher. All Tannehill had to do was hand the ball off, and statistically doesn't come near the production of Carson Wentz because of that fact. He wasn't asked to carry the offense on his back. He wasn't asked to win games on his arm. He was asked to be a consistent, at least down-checking quarterback who could possibly get a few yards every once in a while, the pass play to get a first down. But in general, the offense ran through Derrick Henry. So why is Tannehill getting credit for the success of the Titans? He doesn't have... obviously he did better than Mariota, and he did a good job of keeping the offense in a consistent pace, but that's it. He did not do anything that makes him remarkable compared to what we saw statistically and on the field with even just an eye test of Carson Wentz. Jimmy G also, as we mentioned, was on this list above Carson, and I think that is a complete joke. He's on this list for making the Super Bowl, and that's it, okay? He has trouble with accuracy throwing with more interceptions than anyone I mentioned so far and never cracked 4,000 yards. So high turnover rate and low production. It is unbelievable that Jimmy G even got above Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott was a way better quarterback than Jimmy G. I can't believe that he got on this list up there. Because Jimmy G, of course, is above Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. And I think there's a lot of arguments there. But the fact that Jimmy G is above Dak Prescott is atrocious. And the fact that he made it be over Carson Wentz is ridiculous. We all had the hype from the first year when he came in, but Jimmy G hasn't done anything to make us believe that he is an elite quarterback. He throws to a tight end. He throws check down passes. He had one deep pass he got lucky on, and he was still behind an elite running game that ran by committee, and when you had the hot hand, they gave it to him and let him roll. That's how it worked. Jimmy G wasn't blowing the doors off the league. Jimmy G was just a nice quarterback. He's a quarterback that gets way too much credit for how good that team did this year. Way too much credit. That team got to where they're at with an elite defense, a good running game, and good coaching. Jimmy G does not get credit for that. And he's up there above even Dak Prescott. And I get why Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are above. They get the obvious mutual respect because with an eye test, they are extremely talented. When it comes to someone like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees, you don't always look at the yards. You don't look at the production because it's the name and how they act under pressure, right? Those guys are elite quarterbacks. And I'll never say Carson Wentz should be above them, but it's like when you throw them on this list with everyone else, you have to start looking a little deeper into it. Look at the numbers and seeing, where is Carson Wentz ranking against the greats? Against Tom Brady, against Aaron Rodgers, against Drew Brees. And in a lot of it, Carson does better. He is seeing better production. He is leading teams on more game-winning drives. He is clutch at the end. He's doing all this and is standing up there with the elite quarterbacks that we have held in such high regard and high esteem, yet he is left off these lists and thrown to the side like he is a scrub with this stupid narrative that he is injury-prone, with this whole idea that he can't lead a team. That is ridiculous because we've seen when he was given rookie wide receivers who he didn't get to work with at all during the season, who he didn't get a chance to really get a chance to gel with, to understand how they play, he still made them look good. And they loved playing for him because he tried to push them to excel them. He is obviously a natural leader, and while sometimes his personality doesn't mesh with other people, it is clear that Carson Wentz can be the guy and be the person on the team. Yes, there has been a doubt, like the Eagles did not have a great season, but you can't put that all on his shoulders. The defense didn't show up for many games. The play calling was abysmal. Not to mention Doug Peterson had to adjust his play calling because of so many injuries on the team. It's just not fair to throw him out there. So it makes no sense he doesn't make this list. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So we look obviously at Jimmy G and go on. So after all of this and looking at the players and looking at the numbers, if the NFL 100 has proved anything to us, is that this list, apologies for my getting too excited not be able to say the word list, but it's nothing more than a farce. It's a fun exercise every year just to keep the NFL relevant during the offseason and drive viewers to the channel. It has nothing to do with real skill and is not created with any sense of objectivity. The players lazily pick their friends and players that grab the headlines, and they don't dive deep into the numbers, and they do not give those they don't like a chance. In the words of one of the guests we'll have next week, Carson Wentz is a weird, God-obsessed North Dakotan, and that hurts him with the other players. It just seems to be a fact. How does a player who made the list 2 years in a row and had no slot of production in 2019 get left off? And it becomes obvious. Everyone liked the storyline of Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Ryan Tannehill, and Kirk Cousins. So to the NFL, I salute you with a national salute of the Eagles fans and everyone and ask you one thing. You like that? It is crazy to see who was on this list and who wasn't. I mean, you can go even further. Like, I'm obviously focused on Carson Wentz, who was snubbed, but there are far more players who were snubbed on this list who also deserved it. The fact that Julian Edelman was an honorable mention. Julian Edelman, the one wide receiver the Patriots could rely on, who went over 1,000 yards receiving, even though he was suspended for some games and didn't play a whole season. It is ridiculous. This game is nothing but, this list is nothing more than just to grab headlines. It's absolutely insane. And again, we go even further into it on those that were on it and how they were ranked and how it was supposed to be. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, number 4. He is the clear best quarterback in the league. And I know Lamar Jackson had a great 2019, but so did Patrick Mahomes. And you throw in the intangibles that Patrick Mahomes brings to the game, Lamar Jackson's still growing. Lamar Jackson maybe deserved top 5. I mean, he had a great season, but Patrick Mahomes has to be 1. That is ridiculous that you have Patrick Mahomes not only not number 1 on this list, but he's not the number 1 quarterback because of that list. It blows my mind that this can happen. But again, like we said, it's just clear that this is not a real list of the best 100 players, okay? It's a list of 100 players that really had a good season. And I'm glad there are some names that get on there that absolutely deserve it. Thinking from the Eagles, like Brandon Brooks finally made the list, and he absolutely deserves as a top lineman. There are linemen that get this. There are defensive players that get to put on there, and they deserve it. And there should be some pride in it that they get voted. But overall, it's clear. It becomes just, who is your buddy? Who do you remember making a highlight reel? Who do you remember? And Carson Wentz is going to fall off that because Carson Wentz has had to struggle all last year with a supporting cast that was just clearly not up to snuff. And he suffered from it, but he still took them to the playoffs. And there's this whole injury-prone narrative. He's not injury-prone if he gets hit by an illegal hit to the back of the head and gets a concussion. Okay, that is, in the words of Louis Riddick, who was on ESPN, you just have an agenda if that's something you're pushing out there. Because it's absolutely absurd, especially when you did a whole season, completed it, took them on a crazy run, brought them from behind in multiple instances to get to the playoffs. There's nothing but tenacity, some insanity that he can run. I mean, when you look in his eyes, you know he's a player. He has the will and the drive to win, and to even doubt him as a winner, to doubt him as an elite quarterback in this league is absolutely insane. It enraged me. I could not believe it. Absolutely crazy. But moving on from that, because I would just continue to go in circles on how out of control this list is. But we have to talk on a few other topics. Obviously, we want to be a little more look at the other positive things in there right now. And one thing I want to bring up is obviously this COVID-19 situation, how the leagues are running and how the leagues are going as of right now. The MLB is shitting the bed. Let's just be honest here. The idea that they had where they could be able to play in all their home stadiums, that they would be able to isolate with no fans, that they would test all their players is not working. There was an outbreak in the Marlins where you had 17 total players now tested positive out of 45 on your freaking team. You have an outbreak now in the Cardinals that's affected the Brewers games. The Phillies are not going to come anywhere near to getting their 60 games done because of all the issues of COVID-19, because of the Marlins team, because they came to their stadium without any type of, really responsibility because they knew their players were sick. They still came. So you can't use the Phillies clubhouse. The Phillies have to go on the road. They have players sick. It's on and on and on. And you're just seeing that it's not going to work this way. The clear best way that we see going forward right now is the NBA. The NBA with the bubble should be the example of how the sports league should run. And another great one is the NHL. Basically, the two leagues that decided we're only going to have limited locations to play at. Obviously the NHL with having the Eastern Conference games playing in Toronto, the Western Conference games playing, I believe it's either Calgary or Vancouver, but they only have two stadiums they're playing at. The NBA, they're playing at one location in the bubble. And the one league that is trying to play it everywhere and keep it normal is failing. And so we look at the NFL, and when they come along, how should they model their season? What precautions should they take, and which examples should they look at? Well, clearly they shouldn't be looking at the MLB example. Right now, the NFL is believing that they can play at all their stadiums, and they're going to have their players travel, and they're going to be fine, they're going to test. Well, that's the one system that's not working. Why would you look at all the examples being set forth right now and be like, yep, the MLB, that's the one we want to do it like? It's insane. That is the one strategy right now that is clearly failing. So I give hats off to the NBA and the NHL for making this work and look great. They haven't had any issues so far because they're able to contain all the players, limit their interactions outside, keep them in one place, do not allow anyone to come in and out of that bubble that they're creating, and that limits by a lot the risk of having the COVID outbreak. I mean, the MLB, they're going to have so many teams that don't play the full 60 games. And then the next question comes, if a team doesn't play the full 60 games, but because of their winning percentage, they're first in their division, do they deserve to win the division? I personally think that they shouldn't be allowed to win the division. They could get the second spot. But that's another issue. Our teams are going to play a full schedule, play all 60 games, play against a bunch of tough opponents, but have a worse win percentage because some team played only 50 games and had a great run. I mean, these are the problems that the MLB has forced upon themselves by not trying to limit play to a few stadiums. I know there's a lot of games. I know it's hard to manage, but you could have at least somehow changed the schedule, adapt to the conditions that are the COVID pandemic. And the same goes to the NFL. I understand that with the NFL, with the games played only once a week on Sunday, that you couldn't just have one or two stadiums. But you still could have isolated it to maybe a certain region on the East Coast, to maybe a certain region on the West Coast. Adapt the schedule so no one has to travel across the country. So it's all very localized and kept within the same vicinity. You could do that. You have the power. It is a special year. It is a weird circumstances that we have to be beholden to, and you should adapt to it. You can't just go, well, we're just going to make COVID fit to our system. No, it doesn't work that way. I just, with all the success we're seeing in the NBA right now, with the success we're seeing at the start of the NHL so far, and the lack of scares in both those leagues right now when it comes to COVID, I just can't imagine being an NFL executive and looking at the MLB and being like, well, we're going to do exactly like that, and it's going to be just fine. It's insane. And you have players opting out this year, rightfully so, because they don't want to get sick. They want to stay with their families. They have absolutely the right to, and luckily they have the privilege to because they have enough money to do it, but they're being willing to sit out. In college football, you already had a death in I think it was LSU coaching squad. But we already had a death so far in a college football setting. They're going to try and force college kids to come back and play, which is asinine on its on face value, absolutely. Because yes, you could maybe limit to who they played there as well, but college players who aren't even getting paid, and they're going to have to go out and risk their health, risk their family's health in order to play a game for a college that's going to reap all the benefits and they get none of it. It's ridiculous. I know I have a couple friends that have mentioned to me that they don't believe the NFL season is actually going to happen at all. I believe the NFL season is going to start. They are going to attempt to have it work out. I just think that it's more than likely it's not going to play a full season. I think you're going to have many games that get canceled, postponed. You're not going to be able to make it up because you're kept to a tight deadline for all the obviously viewing reasons. But I think the NFL needs to somehow adapt. They're going to have to figure out either you play games Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you keep teams that play on Friday, play the next Friday, and that's their season there. You figure out pooling groups. You limit the opponents that the teams go against. I mean, if they play just their division, they stay within their general vicinity. And then you play with a few teams outside of it. It's not insane. The scheduling people have done this every year. They can adapt and change it. I just want there to be football so badly, and I don't understand this desire to go out there and copy a system that's clearly not working and not mimic a system that is working. The bubble and containment we see on both the NBA and NHL is the clear gold standard for how this should be done in the United States, and is being ignored by the most popular sports league in the United States. We all want NFL, and they're going to completely shoot themselves in the foot with what they're planning right now. There's no way there's no outbreak that happens in the NFL. It's impossible for that to happen. Impossible. We've already seen so far in the MLB that there is outbreaks across, and it is completely delaying it. There's no way the NFL does not have an issue with that. And that's my biggest fear. Who's it going to impact? Look at the Eagles. From my standpoint of fan, I look at the Eagles. Lane Johnson's already on the COVID sick list. We already had two other players. I think Mailata was on it, and Gary, and a linebacker Gary's also on the list. It's insane. We're already having players drop off, and we don't know how long it'll be. We don't know what the side effects will be after they recover, whether their breathing will be impacted, whether they'll be able to stay on the field the whole time, will they be able to play at the same level that they were able to play before. There's all these concerns and risks that are associated with it, with them getting sick. Teams are going to get decimated by this. Games are going to get canceled. I know I'm being pessimistic here in that sense, but as much as I believe the season will start, all of these are real possibilities of issues they will face. And I don't think the NFL is taking it fully serious here. And it's going to be a shame for all the fans who are not going to be able to watch. It's going to be a shame for the players who are putting themselves at risk for this to happen and might not get a full season. I feel bad for all of it. But with that said, and my take on kind of the COVID situation around the leagues, I really hope the NFL will adapt and make something different and take the examples we've seen so far. The NBA has been so exciting. Love watching the games. It's amazing to have it on. I think they're doing a great job with the setup, with the fans on the screen in the back, the way the players are separated. I think we have a lot more excitement coming from that, and we'll have some great games. The NHL, it's amazing to have an NHL restart in playoff mode, to see the excitement around the players as they get fully invested into it and play the Habs-Pittsburgh game was really exciting last night. They were playing hard, and they had been out for so long. It's just incredible to see them going at it. So happy the Habs pulled off a win there, so hopefully to see success there as well. But, we have a lot to celebrate, and a lot of things to be excited for, and a lot of pieces that are adding some more normalcy into our daily lives. But we still have to be cautious. We still have to try and wish for the best out of the other leagues. Let's hope the MLB has a full season, that they don't have to prepare for the worst, as the commissioner has said. Let's hope that the NFL is able to have a full season, and that we get to have the sport we love so much come back to us. But, let's be careful. Let's remember that these are people's lives at risk, at stake, that their families' health is at stake, and that, there's a lot of money on the line here. So let's get it right. Let's use all the precautions we can. Let's not just ignore this and think it's a normal situation. So thank you, as always, for coming and joining us on the show. Appreciate you listening in. Next week, as I mentioned, we will have some guests on the show. We'll have a good roundtable discussion looking at NFL kind of redraft strategy that would go into an NFL redraft if all players are on the table ready to go, as well as another look at the COVID situation, how it's evolved. We'll see if there's more news on the leagues and the MLB and how they're playing their games. But we're going to hit on all those topics and more next week, so be sure to listen on that. It'll be a great episode. These episodes will obviously be released every Monday at 7 p.m. Be sure to check in I'm so happy to get on and be able to talk to you guys. We're back in the world of sports. We're back to having something to be excited about, scores to look at in game. We're going to break down the Sixers games as they go on later in the week and next week as well. I'll have that discussion brought up. So stay tuned. Be sure to check in for all that. Thank you for listening in. Cannot wait to have you on for another one. Until next time, have a good evening and good night. Thank you for listening to the ChadBurn Show. Remember to check out all new episodes every Monday at 7 p.m. on Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all major platforms where you listen to your podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me and you want to send in your questions or requests for topics to discuss in the show, you can email chadburn.show@gmail.com. All episodes have video recorded, which is then posted to our YouTube channel, The ChadBurn Show. Be sure to subscribe to us where you get your podcast or on our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our new content. You can also follow the show on Instagram at ChadBurn Show and on Facebook, The ChadBurn Show, to see clips from previously recorded episodes and information on all upcoming shows.